Okay, so our last discussion for the morning is we're going to do a grower panel on embracing new potato technology. So I'm going to ask Chad and Jason and Craig to come up and join me up here on the podium, I guess. And I'm going to be sort of leading the discussion or moderating a discussion on how some different producers in PEI are adopting new technologies, specifically precision ag technologies on farm, how they're integrating that into their operations. So come on up, guys. So just take a seat wherever you would like. What I've asked is for each producer just to take 5 minutes or so to introduce themselves, their farm a little bit. They each have a few slides to share, and talk about some of the technologies that they've been integrating on farm, why that was important to them, and how they're sort of going through that. Once each of those producers has talked a little bit about themselves, then I have a few questions, just like in terms of continuing the conversation, and then we should have some time for some questions from you folks, because I'm sure you'll have some questions as well. So first, I'm going to ask Chad Mooney. I'll give you the clicker. You can click through. You can tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, you got me? I was thinking as I drove in today, if you want to give someone imposter syndrome, put them in front of a bunch of potato growers after you've moved home for 3 years, and then say, hey, talk about adopting technology on your farms after being in the military for 15 years. But then I realized the amount of calls I got from Dad resetting Wi-Fi passwords and trying to figure out what channel the Wii needed to be on to make it all work. I was like, maybe I'm a bit of a tech guru around the house. I don't know. So what that comes down to is today I want to talk more so about a process and sort of individual technologies we've adopted. And essentially I was trying to avoid the classic learning cycle on a farm where you're showed something, told you're in a rush, and then gain disappointment when you've messed it up for the first time, which I don't know if anyone in the room experienced that, but I definitely have. So yeah, the process that I'm going to walk through is sort of when you don't know something, you try to adopt it to something you're already familiar with. And what I realized is that the military wasn't much different from potato farming when it came to the summertime. You're basically cruising around trying to find bad things and kill them before the year's done. And that's integrated pest management to a T. So I overlaid that to the military system we use, and I was like, wow, this is actually suddenly, this sounds relatively useful. So yeah, what we're going to talk about is drones, satellite technology, as well as small drones with mapping, and then Harvest Eye. Okay, yeah, that's me. I basically covered all those things. The crop monitoring tool we used was EOSDA for satellite, and that was at a 10-meter resolution. We didn't apply to enough acreage to get 1.5 meters, but we're looking at that for this year. And then at the back end of the season, I got a DJI Agris T50 drone with the intention of doing some foliar fertilizer work, as well as some oil applications and frost seeding and other seed trials. So we have those coming up this summer to try some things, as well as some working. I'm working with the Department of Environment and the province to try to figure out some other things we want to try. But again, we're not, if there's good ideas in the crowd, bring them up and we can try anything this year, because I think that's sort of the purpose of this year. So you'll see on the left is the Agris T50. Not something that is super, you've probably all got the same YouTube channel subscription stuff I do, which targets you with videos of those things flying around and other cool farm stuff. And then on the right side is the Mavic 2 Enterprise, which was doing mapping at that time and looking at basically a stand assessment that was in the middle of a trial and mapping the complete field. Video start on its own.
You guys might have to start the video for us.
So it's not super exciting. It's what you'd expect. Drone takes off, flies around, and in this trial we were doing foliar fertilizer with Yara. So we were applying basically last stand at a 50-50 or a 1-to-4 ratio onto tillage radish to see if we'd get leaf burn. And yeah, much to the success of the trial, we did not get leaf burn. It was relatively windy. It's cool in the video. You may see that as we're spraying, you do see some spray drift behind the drone of the foliar fertilizer. You can actually snap the droplet size on the controller. So as we sprayed and saw the spray drift, we actually increased from about 100 microns to 300 to 400 microns, and you could see the spray drift move back under the drone. So it's pretty neat to see in action. And yeah, this summer, anyone that wants to drive all the way up to Surrey, feel free. I'll be there flying around with the drone. And so it stays fairly consistent. So the purpose of the drone, so the way we overlaid it, or I overlaid it to make myself not feel stupid as I looked at integrated pest management, was in the military we would use a system that was find, fix, and strike. So you'd find a thing, you'd try to put it in the same space, so then you could kill it with something else, was the premise. I looked at those things as taking it over 3 years, trying to master find, then trying to master fix, then trying to master strike. And if you look at them in that way, it kind of makes things a lot more siloed, which is nice. The first year we looked at find, but the thing that I realized is we didn't have great yield data, so really at the end of the year we couldn't actually extrapolate a find. So no matter what happened, the NDVI could have been awesome and the stand could have looked amazing, and then someone counted trucks and told me that was the yield, and I believed them. I was like, oh, okay, this is great. So number of trucks correlates to the field, awesome. But in-field data, we didn't have a lot of great stuff. So we switched over to HarvestEye last fall to try to get a better understanding of the find so we could work backwards to see when we had NDVI that was a different success or failure, what did it actually equal on the actual yield side of it? And this trial in particular is interesting because we had a biostimulant trial. The bottom half was treated, top half was not treated. In the bottom half, the NDVI was much better all season, the crop stand was much better, and then at the end of the trial, number of trucks off the field was the same, but you can see the dark green up top is actually average tuber length. So the tubers were actually, on average, bigger in the untreated area of the trial, which then walked us down a myriad of opinions on why, and everyone has one. But what's more important is that this is an example of finding data for next year that may say that just because your NDVI is good doesn't mean your yield is better in a certain area. The next one I'll touch on quickly is satellite imagery. So again, we wanted to trial satellite imagery. It was, I think, 66 cents an acre to trial it on USDA. So we threw half of our acres in there and said, whatever, we'll manage it that way. I think it was around August 1st or 2nd, Dad was in the sprayer, and he was like, hey, this field seems weird, you should go take a look at it. Ironically, it was one of the ones I didn't apply to on ESDA, so I had no satellite imagery on it. But you can apply backwards, and you can look at images from before, and you get one every 4 days. So I immediately, 30th of August, was like, I wonder what's happening here. You can see on the picture on the right, it started off with a bit of a red patch, but nothing crazy in the field to your eye. Within 2 weeks, that was the field, same field, and it was basically all red. So myself and Eric Richter went in and we did some infield trials and some scouting through it out. And it ended up being a bit of a botrytis infection that moved through. But ironically, the sprayer had broken down for like a week prior, so we missed an application there. But we would have caught it had we had applied to the satellite imagery. So I think this is another good example of the find. And then when we actually went through with the drone at a higher resolution, because you're getting like sub-inch on the drone, you could actually see lines in the field that were also missing some fertilizer from the fertilizer application. So there's a lot of interesting things that we pulled when we went from satellite to drone as well. And you don't have to be like an engineer or a rocket scientist to fly a drone. Literally, you make a map at home, you hit go, and it flies. And usually I do a 10-foot strip at the same time. So it does its own thing. You go home, you make a map, and you pull up your NDVI. And the NDVI on ESDA is actually super simple. And there's also multiple indexes you can flip through depending on what stage of your season you're at between MSA AVI and NDVI and NDRE. And it like explains it in normal people words, not like scientist words, which is super helpful. The last one, so more information on HarvestEye is we used it sort of on infield trials as well to do side-by-side analysis. It was super great because it gave you sort of a side-by-side analysis with at the same time, you didn't have to take the potatoes back to the farm to measure, and you had all of the individual tuber lengths, widths, dimensions, and everything into an Excel spreadsheet directly to your email. So this became super simple. I would go to the field, I would take the drone, I would send it out on a flight, I would do 2 10-foot strips on either side, take 4 pictures with the HarvestEye, bury them back in the field, and drive home. And usually by the time I got home, I would process the image, and I would have all the data within a couple of hours of that infield trial. So the HarvestEye handheld, which is an additional kind of, extra money, as all farming things are, but it's super useful. And one thing I would recommend is even if you didn't want to get HarvestEye on your tractor, if you have a farm in your region that has HarvestEye, you could easily just steal their HarvestEye, go out and do your data. They probably wouldn't want me to tell you that, but you could just use their HarvestEye and take a picture of your stuff, and you're going to get the same deliverable. So if one farm within 4 had it, everyone could use the handheld on their trials or their infield measurements. So that's one thing I would lesson learned for me on that one. And before I hand over to someone way more intelligent, Craig, the final sort of portion I'll leave you with is that the find elements in the military, they broke it down to what was called ISTAR. And it was like intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance. We do the same thing on the farm. Reconnaissance, people walk around and look for things. Intelligence, you collect data and try to kind of find some sort of semblance of information on what you should do with it. And then the actual surveillance piece becomes your satellite and your drone, and then your target acquisition just becomes the red spot on the map. So once you have that on a map and you send someone there to tell you what it is, your actual strike component, which is what do you apply there, becomes your actual IPM strategy, and that in itself is, it's not simple, but when it's broken down into silos, it becomes like an elephant that you can eat one bite at a time. So yeah, that's sort of all my stuff on the drone. The other biggest takeaway on the spray drone is that the seeding element of it is super useful for cover cropping. And some of the trials that we're looking at this summer from a frost seeding standpoint or an interseeding on an already established stand are stuff that normally wouldn't be as doable with a small window of time that you then kind of open it up because the drone doesn't have to drive in the field, obviously. So anyone that has questions on that, we're going to be navigating it this fall, or this spring and fall, so feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Chad. I was up to see the spray drone this fall. She's a pretty cool piece of tech, and Chad also used it to seed covers in one of our trials, one of our living lab trials. So we'll be keeping an eye on how that's going forward as well. Craig, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ryan. My name's Craig McCluskey, and I have no military experience, unlike Chad, and no sexy drones either. I farm with Blaine McPherson, Central PEI. We grow processing and seed potatoes, and those are varieties that we listed there, the main varieties, and some of these new varieties are very exciting and really enjoy growing most of them and stuff. Yeah, so I'll move on here. I'll skip press wheel. I'll move to harvest eye. I'll move to our fall hiller here. There's nothing revolutionary here. But we're trying to combine three different things all in one pass for a fall hiller. First is the fall hilling itself. The second is deep ripping right below where the seed is, and trying to create a lower density soil zone, a healthy zone for the seed. We'll get into the specifics of it in a bit. And the third, of course, is putting a winter cover crop on the back there. So that's the purpose of the baskets there, is to actually kind of bury the seed. So the first thing, the hilling itself, we started that 4 years ago, and we've seen a huge benefit with soil moisture and also the temperature of the soil. I think when you tested it, Ryan, you got 3 degrees in the difference. Yeah. And so we're not using this on moldboard land. We don't really feel we need it. So it's all in Lemken ground where, what I noticed when we started Lemkening, it was too moist and the soil was cooler down below. Not the surface level, but down below. So that's why we started fall hilling. And we did a lot of testing, and, we see the difference. So we fall hill all the Lemken ground now. Just don't even think about it. The improvement this machine makes to the fall hilling ground is, instead of making one big hill of 34 inches, where we used just a regular hiller in the fall, we are splitting the row again to make 2 17-inch hills, which hopefully more surface area, hopefully warmer soil, more fit in the spring, maybe go a bit earlier is the idea. This is the first fall we use this, so it's yet to be confirmed, let's say. So that's an old John Deere ripper that we have there, and we weren't using it anyway, so we decided to use that. Kind of parked for a while because it's pretty good. One thing it's good at is pulling up rocks. That we found. So we haven't used that probably in 3 or 4 years at all. We liked what we seen when we ripped the soil, but like I said, it got kind of sickening dealing with the rocks. So we used that machine and we modified it, and we moved those shanks, which were originally, I think, 28 inches, and there were 7 of them across the back of the hiller. It wasn't a big deal to modify it and put 6 on right where the seed's going to be placed next year, and center them at 34 inches, so it's right where the seed's going to be. And in doing that, it will split that row. So the whole idea is we're going to have 2 17-inch hills there. We still got some work to do regarding how we mold it and how it fits the baskets. But overall, it seemed to work pretty good in the fall. And then the ripper themselves, like I said earlier, this would be the first year that we did this. I consulted Jordan Visser. He's been doing it for a while, and you've seen positive results there, I think. And he seemed to like it, so. And I've been thinking about it for years, so. Yeah, so we're giving it a go this fall, and we'll see what it looks like when we plant into this. But hopefully, we're going to produce a lower density of soil right around the seed, better drainage underneath the seed. Yeah, and just a better oxygenated environment for the seed to be healthier. And then, of course, on the back there is the seeder, and the purpose of the baskets, and just putting on whatever seed you decide to. This year we're putting on, for the first year, typically we use oats and that sort of thing that dies over the winter. But this year we're trying some winter rye, and I'd also like to try some winter wheat as well. I think there might be some advantages to hold the soil in the spring and possibly get a nutrients release. Of course, you'd have to spray it with Roundup in the spring, but sometimes we're having to do that anyway, it seems. So that's the fall ripper. And nope, other way. And the harvest eye. So it was very interesting looking at the results of this. This was on the harvester, and every morning I was looking at it. I seen little iterations where things were off, but I think there possibly is value there. It would be nice if this was tied to our yield monitor. That's where I'd really see the benefit, to have that visual and take some of the rocks and dirt. That's, to me, I think that could be something that could really improve the accuracy of the yield monitor, as well as giving you the size profile of the seed or of the crop. That's my take on that. I didn't really have, after fall, I didn't really have time to dig into it all. Steve Watts and Evan McDonald, they have access to, I think, all the data, or at least mine, and they're I think they're going to do a presentation on the harvest eye by itself. Oh, wrong way. And here is our latest technology with Bluefield Seeding Solutions, which is called Precise Product Placement. So the wheel senses the seed, same as how it currently does. I should mention, it's just an additional feature that's going to be built on top of the existing seed sensing platform. And is this a video here? Is this going to play? No lasers, Jed. No, so the wheel senses the seed, and then that's a bank of nozzles for in-furrow products, and then there's solenoids. So we know exactly where the seed is. We know the distance behind the wheel. We know the nozzle velocity, and we can, in this testing belt we have here, we can just hammer the seed right on the very top of it. It's actually, from a development standpoint, it was pretty easy to do. Building a commercial product is a different thing, and we're going to have 8 of these systems out in the field this year using different products. I think fertilizer's probably the lowest hanging fruit, and we're not asking anybody to go off any label rates or anything, but we think there's value there in placing the products more precisely around and on top of the seed. Now, it's not applicable to every single product, so you have to look at the products individually. And I think that's that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. So Craig mentioned the Harvest Eye project. So through the board, we engaged with Genesis Crop Systems and Evan this past year, to look at the Harvest Eye on 3 different farms, incorporating seed, table, and processing. So we're going to have a report to share with you that too, but it was interesting to get the perspectives of the two guys that were using it this year, and I can kind of talk about that a little bit more. Next, Jason, I'll just turn it over to you. You had a few different projects to talk about as well.
Okay. Yeah, Ryan asked me a little while ago to get up here and talk, and these two fellows did such a great job. I'm going to have to see if I can do half decent for you here today. So, a few of the technologies, or I'll talk about myself for a second, I guess. My name's Jason Webster, for all of you that don't know me. I'm on a joint venture farm with three neighboring farms came together. We're located in Middleton. We do processing table and seed potatoes. We're mostly in a 3-year crop rotation. Our varieties you can see up there, Mountain Gems, Targees, Dakotas, Alverstons, Caribous, and Russet Burbank. Three of the things Ryan asked me to talk about today was where we've been using Climate Field View now as a data program and for satellite imagery, and some site-specific field management stuff we've been doing. We've also had a set of Craig's press wheels on our planter now for several years, along with the seed sensing technology, so I'll mention that for a minute. And last 2 years, I guess, we've been using variable rate seeding, and we're gonna stay with that fairly steady. So, move ahead. That's just a picture of the planter, my planter. A lot of you are familiar with this. If you're into this stuff today, it kind of looks a little bit busy. Does this pointer work to you guys too? So we'll start off with Climate Field View. So this is the iPad I have in the planter that's running the Climate Field View. You'll see kind of down over here, there's a node that comes from Climate Field View. It's just above the thing there that plugs into our Trimble, and then that's sending the signal up to the iPad, and then it's tracking what's going on with the planter. What I have found nice about the Climate Field View, we run 2 planters in the field all the time. Darcy and I operate 2 Grimmy planters, so we've got it hooked up on both. You can go back after, see what planter did what, where, what speed they were going, what direction they were going. So if there's any kind of anomaly in the field that you're not sure about, whether it be anything at all, fertilizer rate or whatever, you can go back and see who it was and what was going on, and then address the planter at that point, if you so wish. We're also using Climate Field View in all our air seeder when we're seeding our cereals. I don't have any pictures here of it, but it's the same setup, hooked up to the Trimble. And that's tracking everything that our air seeder's doing, which is coming in handy as well later when you're going back reviewing your records. The other thing we really like about Climate Field View, and I'll just go ahead here. So this here is a picture of one of our seed fields a couple of years ago. You can see here all the different varieties in the field. And because we use Climate and we did a half decent job of operating it in the field, it's a very nice map to be able to share amongst yourselves after the fact, even on your own farm, as to where all the varieties are. I don't know what it's like for you guys, but I know Dad and George and the guys are, where are those seeds? Where are those plants? Where are the Albertsons at? Where are this? So you can hand this off to any of your crew or your staff or your partners. They can see what's going on. I've also used it well with CFIA, with our inspectors. Just print this off and hand it to your inspector. They like it very much. They go to the field. They know right where everything is, all the different varieties, if you're doing different varieties. Climate Field View also allows you to, I can't see it in this, but there is a gray row all the way along these lines where we can see where we set the Climate Field View to show where we left the blank row. So when it comes time, where this really comes in handy is when you're here harvesting and all the seed is been defoliated and ready for harvest, and you're like, which one is where? So our windrower operators have the Climate Field View iPads right in the tractor with them, and they can actually step right out and zoom it up and walk right up to the row and say, okay, here's where it is. I found the blank row. Now I know where that variety is. So it's really made it handy when you're working with that kind of stuff. There's a lot more. We're also using Climate Field View in our sprayers. Both sprayers are equipped with it. We have found that handy as well. You come in after the fact, something happened to one of the sprayers, or we had a burn one time, and we were trying to isolate what went on. We were able to tell which sprayer it was, where it came from before that, and we did isolate what we believe what happened. It's handy for that kind of a thing, looking back at your records. I'm trying to think what else. We have used some of the satellite imagery to see how the pivots are doing, Ryan. Whenever I didn't have put a picture of it up here, but I know Troy last year was asking me, you know, are we really seeing a difference with the irrigation? I said, I think you're going to. And I said, and 2 weeks later, we pulled it up on the Climate Field View satellite imagery, and could you ever see where the circles were? But in the beginning, it wasn't really showing up just on a visual eye of us walking around. So that's about it on the Climate Field View. We're still actively using it. Oh, the other piece, sorry, is we're also trying to, the reason we have it in the sprayers and in the planters and the seeder is it compiles all the data then into your planting records, and you can use it to flip over to H1, and you can use it to flip over into the FCC software for if you're reporting to Cavendish Farms or any other processor that's using that. It's not been 100% smooth the last couple of years. We're working at it. It's not quite perfect, but FCC is working with us and Climate Field View is working with us, and we got it a lot better. But you do have to get your field names probably down to either you're always using the exact same spelling or put a number along with them. We chose to go with a number along with them and change that this past year, and that's been quite a process. Because I don't know about your farms, but somebody says we're going to Tommy Wigmore front, and then somebody else goes to the field and says, yeah, we're at Wigmore's front. Well, you got that two things written down, and you try to send that through the software, it doesn't work very well. So that's another piece when you're using these things it's important to start off with, is try and get your field list down to 100% something that can be identified, and attaching a number to the fields can help that. I like to talk too much, Ryan, so I might run you over. So we'll go back to, actually, I want to go back to the press wheel. Put the press wheel on a few years ago. How many years ago, Craig? 5, 6?
You were the very first one.
Yeah.
Of the first ones.
It was one of the first ones with you that year. Anyway, we had the press wheel by itself for a couple of years, and then we went to the seed sensing. And on the screen here, you'll see, if I can get this to work, this is the monitor that Craig supplies with the seed sensing. And you can see here, I kind of zoomed it up here. You can see the different rows in the planter. The reason I found this interesting was 2 reasons. I wanted to talk to it about when we get to the variable rate seeding, but I also wanted to talk about, you see here, I got one row over here down at 80%. And what I like about the press wheel and the seed sensing is you find out what rows of your planter are working better than others, and that happens. They do operate differently, and you can go out and find out you've got a shoot close too much, or you're over full in the bowl or something. It forces you out to the planter to see what's going on, and you can make some adjustments. And that was just an example that I happened to snap that picture and one of the rows was down, so it was an example. Or it could be just a blip. It can happen for a few seconds, but I find the seed sensing great for that purpose as well. The other thing, I guess, about the seed sensing that system that gave us a lot of comfort is, I'll move into the variable rate seed spacing. We moved into variable rate seed spacing the last 2 years. We ended up upgrading the electronics on both of our planters. You'll see here on the screen. Oop, I'm getting messed up around the mic. Here we go. This is the Grimmie controller that if any of you have newer Grimmie or Spudnik, probably you're running that in your planter now. That is up to date within, I think, 2018 or something, they come out with those. So that, we ended up upgrading both planters to that system, changed the electronics in them, and that allowed both planter, and put the hydraulic drive system in both of them, and then that let us run variable seed spacing. We worked with Dialed In Precision, and we've done pretty well all our fields now with SWOT mapping, and we use the SWOT mapping then and take those maps, and Brennan's been helping us out. Then we set up zones in the field based on what the SWOT map's putting out, 5 different zones, and then he goes out and soil samples them based on those zones, and then those zones allow us to come back. And I've been working with Evan McDonald and Brennan a bit on the seed spacing, and Evan's made us up some maps. I'll forward on to one of those. So you'll see here, I don't think you can see that very good, can you? I don't know. I can't see it from here, but you guys might. It's one of the maps. You'll see I think it's 0.25 there, isn't it? I should just get.
0.25.
0.25 is, it's in metric because of the GRIMI wants it in metric. But basically, you're running around, I should have asked Siri before I come in here what 0.25 was, because I don't have it in my head for inches. But anyway, we'll go along with it. I think it was Dakotas we were playing, so we were probably around 10 inches or so. And we've just been moving a slight percentage, like an inch either way, or 10% either way on the seed spacing for now. And I know some people are trying to move farther, and we might look at moving farther too. The thing we found in Ames, a lot of projects, or trials that AIM did on the variable rate seeding, is that they seen a gain pretty well every time. So we kind of bought in fairly quickly. We tried it once, it did see a gain, so then we bought in, and we've been doing it across the farm on all varieties now. And it does seem to be working out well for us, and we're going to continue, and we may try now starting to widen it a little bit more, where you put it a little wider on the tougher parts of the field and a little narrower on the better, and see how it goes. The other map there, just to be quick, is a map that Margaret did up for me from Phoenix. It's just we also do some variable rate fertilizer based on our SWOT mapping and whatnot, and that's just one of the fields across the road from home, just showing how the different areas and the different rates that got generated whenever we pulled up this map. So this was going in with potash pre-plant ahead of the planter, and variable rate in the field to try and even up the potash levels in the field. And we have been doing that for now several years, and we're also doing it with our lime as well. And I do think it's evening up the field some. There's lots more to do. We'll have to keep working at it, but it is working. I think that's it. I could keep rambling on about farming because I love it so much, but I'll stop and wait for questions.
Well, I got a couple more questions for you too. So thanks, Jason. And I think it's good. I was purposeful in choosing these three guys to come and talk a little bit about these technologies, because some of them are, like some of the stuff that Chad's talking about is pretty new and is not stuff that we've covered in AIM before, but it's stuff that we're interested in working on, interested in working with people like Chad, and we started working with Chad a little bit on a couple of projects. But then also we've got, everybody knows Craig's quite an innovator and has been doing some interesting things himself, and he's been taking some of the AIM stuff on the hilling that we looked and then putting it onto more acres of his own and seeing some benefit. And then, Jason, taking on some of what was done with Evan and the variable rate seeding that was also done through AIM, and then again putting that onto a big acreage and seeing, it's one thing to do it on one field, it's one thing to do it on a lot of acres and see see whether you're happy with it or whether you want to keep going with it. So it's one thing to have a new technology. It's the adoption level and what we learn about adopting technology as we go along. So I guess my first question is, you've all talked about some very interesting new technologies, whether they're equipment or whether they're process. What would you say each of you is probably has been the biggest challenge of adopting new technology on your farm in, say, the last 2 to 5 years? Start with you, Chad.
Yeah, so I'd say Harvest Eye is a great example of the pursuit of perfection. And I think sometimes I'll be around the farm and they'll be like, the number doesn't make sense, or this seems weird. And I think what I always come back to is like, well, the person at the farm weighed 4 baskets off the truck, and Harvest Eye, I think in your picture, had 210,000 measurements. So I'm like, to get someone to measure 210,000 things at the farm is astronomically difficult. So it may not be perfect, but it's probably more perfect than our current processes that we have in place. And I think that one dovetails into sort of the biggest challenge being, oftentimes I'll be at the farm and Dad or somebody around there will say, you know what, I'm not smart enough to understand this. But I think if you're a grower in this room, you're probably one of the most intelligent people on the planet. And I think you're actually just navigating so many things that one more thing is like, I just don't want to even learn what a machine learning algorithm is. I have to do 20 or 30 other things. So I think at the end of the day, it's take time to ask the questions, because the question that you have is probably a reasonable one.
Thanks, Chad. Craig?
Yeah, I'm always excited to try new things, and that's the easy part. Where I drop the ball, or what I find hard to do, is to actually do the evaluation after the fact. So that's the tough part on our farm, and That's why we're getting help in that area now, so with Steve and Evan too as well, and Ryan as well, helping us monitor the results when we try something new.
Jason?
Yeah, I guess challenges to it are just overcoming the idea of trying something different can be quite a challenge on any farm. I guess I'll talk about the variable rate seeding. We kind of jumped on that one, and I want to attribute a lot of it to a lot of the work that we've all as growers contributed to AIM and the research that was done. We just decided that this was an easy one to be low risk because we're only moving the seed spacing a little bit. We're not going to have a big impact negatively, likely, no matter what happens. But there was a real upside to it. So I hope we, as a group, keep working on that kind of stuff. And as Craig said, getting the data back on when we do the trials. But eventually, I guess the challenge is, when do you decide that you're okay with it and you believe what you're seeing and you go? It was easy with that one to go ahead and do it because it seemed real good. I find that is probably the biggest challenge, is getting your head around the idea that, okay, there's been enough testing done, I don't got to test it to death. Because unfortunately, in our lifetimes, we probably only have 30 crops at the best, 25 to 30 crops that any one of us are going to control what happens in it. I joked with a house builder down the road, a friend of mine that lives with my neighbor. I said, you're probably building 30 houses a year, you get pretty darn good at it, and you get tries different stuff and see quick results. We have, if we keep testing stuff to death, we don't get there. So it's important to keep the stuff going, and that's the thing for me, I guess, is let's keep working on that stuff and getting the results back, and then that we can trust so that we can move forward quicker, because we don't have a whole lot of time to do it when we got to wait a year every time to try and decide something.
Thanks, Jason. My last question is, what are some other new types of technology or new types of, procedures or practices or that sort of thing that you're looking at going forward? Like what's the next, like when nobody's standing still, so what's the next thing that you're kind of looking at?
So for us this year, we're looking at CropX to sort of take something in and look at soil monitoring, weather stations, transpiration, and nitrogen within the fields. And again, it comes back to that find comment that I started with, is trying to get better at finding things. Because ultimately, you'll look at a field and something might die early, and you'll be like, well, I think that's just how potatoes work. Sometimes they die, and it's like, well, there's probably more to it. And then the other side of it is trying to work early with Croptic, which is another company that does super low-level drone flights, but you fly it on farm, it goes to their processors, then they process and try to identify things in the field. And again, it comes back to the kind of earlier statement, is it's never going to be right. It's never going to find the thing perfectly every time. But with all machine learning and all AI, which are the cool buzzwords these days, like the more data that goes in, the better it gets over time. So not adopting it doesn't make it any more accurate.
Craig?
Yeah, well, we probably have enough stuff going on now. But, something I'd like to get into is some of the drones where we see opportunities for efficiencies there with, what has to happen is products have to get registered, and I'd love to stop having to buy $750,000 or $1 million sprayers, right? The drones look pretty cheap and could be pretty efficient, and, just talking to Chad about it, it's an exciting area. Regarding other, future stuff, I know AI is a buzzword, but I think eventually, I haven't seen where there's, huge opportunities that have proven yet, but I think eventually there is going to be there as we get all this data incorporated. AI's making improvements behind the scenes and everything else, so it probably will happen, in potato production as well. So,
Jason?
Yeah, I guess sometimes we feel a bit like we got a lot of stuff going on too. We want to keep refining, I guess, what we're doing, but on the irrigation side of things, we're trying to work with, learning better windows. I was interested in the presentations here earlier about keeping the potatoes in that comfort zone, and I guess we're going to be focused on that and controls for that and whatnot. And continuing to get Climate Field View in a better spot where we're actually able to keep using more of what's inside it, because I think we're not tapping into enough of it. There's more we can do, and I guess that's most of it for now.
Great. Any questions from the floor for our three panelists? David?
Dave Francis. Yes, really enjoyed the presentation of the drones. I happened to be in Saskatchewan in the summer and visited a farm that was using some drones. It's crazy, the technology there that that's available to us now. It will be. Is there any room to get a permit from the Department of Environment or whoever to do some testing with fungicides? Number one question. Number two, we grow soybeans and corn. We harvest our potatoes reasonably early, seed growers. So we're not having any trouble getting the cover crops on for potatoes. But corn and soybeans, mainly a November harvest date. So as it stands now, we don't have a real good way to cover crop those two crops. 35 years ago or more, when we had access to planes, we used to spread a cover crop on the soybeans when they were full green, and it worked fantastic. Grass seeds, we even harvested for hay the following year without any tillage at all. So just a question on acreages that you can cover with your drone now. Are you thinking about doing some work on corn or soybeans? I don't know if you grow any of those in your own farm, but I mean, look at the acres of soybeans and corn that's been grown on Prince Edward Island, and virtually none of it has been cover cropped, or if we are trying, but we're not getting near the success because of the late harvest dates. So, so just a two question, and it was just crazy. At the demonstration I was at in Saskatchewan is the acreages that they're able to cover. The capacities of the drones seem fairly small, but the acreage they could cover within in a number of hours is equivalency or greater than the best ground-driven sprayers we have available to us. So so just on the environment and if you've got a
totally.
bit of information on what's coming in those areas.
Yeah, so
thank you to all three. Great presentations actually, and thank you, Ryan. A good topic.
No problem. So with the environment one yesterday, I was actually talking to the department yesterday, and so everyone always, there's a bit of a misnomer that PMRA is sort of what everyone's waiting on. And it is accurate, like there is no labels for drones right now. However, there are pesticides that have labels. So my question to them was, if I chose to spray those tomorrow, how are we getting there? Because I could spray Garland XRT to kill poplar in a forestry stand in Alberta tomorrow. And so their answer was like, well, we're currently trying to take the Alberta one and kind of repurpose it to Prince Edward Island. Once we have that, then we'll have our actual certification for drones done. So I think if there's a message on that, it's sort of like if you're a grower that's interested in this, voice your opinion to get that certification on the ground sooner rather than later. Because I'd rather learn how to fly the drone and operate it before it's filled with a pesticide or an herbicide, and that's why I have it on farm now. But ultimately, they are open to working on stuff, and that's why I kind of mentioned I'm working with the Department of Ag and Environment right now on some smaller scale trials on stuff that's like super low risk. And ultimately, I think with all government, it comes down to who owns the risk, and if I own the risk, people are willing to work with me. If I'm trying to pass the risk, obviously no one wants to work with someone that's trying to pass the risk off. So it's just quantifying it and kind of getting someone to work with you on those. And that's why we're working foliar fertilizers first, because like there's no label for them. I can do whatever I want with a foliar fertilizer, which is great. The other question is kind of following the industry through the U.S. and Western Canada. We don't grow soybeans nor corn on our farm. However, a lot of people are interseeding kind of with drones all the time. And the current seed rates, last fall I tried with oats and barley. They were a little bigger, a little harder to work with, not as consistent. Winter wheat and fall rye flowed super well. And like at that time, I was flying the field at like 20 to 30 kilometers an hour with a 30-foot span sort of on a spread width. So when you kind of run the numbers on a 110-pound tank, let's say you're running 30 to 40 pounds per acre, you could bump it up to 60 if you wanted to. But the thing is if you station yourself in the field in a kind of reasonable spot, the drone's always coming back. So it's kind of where you put yourself is one of the most important things, because you have 15 minutes on a battery, and basically the generator will cycle batteries all day. So if you can get enough that you can kind of, we were looking at buckwheat and stuff like that on sort of a lower 20 to 30-pound seeding rate, covering 9 acres and then smashing out basically 15-minute passes. And you would 40 to 60 acres an hour on a single drone's no problem on something like that. And then the actual volume of the spray material itself for liquid is around 40 liters. So again, foliar fertilizers, splitting it 20-20 to not get leaf burn. You get past 10 acres pretty quick on a 2-liter last end pass. So there's lots of potential. But again, those are great ideas that if you want to do a 10-acre trial, yeah, we could go throw some seeds with the drone and see if they catch. Because, yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're interested in. So
I think there's a real potential for the drones for seeding, overseeding corn and soybeans, but also like some other crops as well. But especially things that are low seeding rate, so some forages, some like, you know, clovers, Sudan, like radish, that sort of stuff, mustard, that you can put in after the weed-free period's over, so you're not setting back the corn or the soybean crop, but and then maybe even time it before a rain or something, if it ever rains in the summer. And if you could time it before that, then you'll get a little bit of soil contact on the seed as well. I think it's got some real potential.
And something we thought about from a soil contact standpoint too is doing a single pass where you pass your seed and then literally just swapping tanks in the trailer and then doing a pass with foliar fertilizer on a spray that basically simulates a rain event but with fertilizer in it that then hits your germination and soil contact. So there's tons of stuff we can play around with.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess we'll not advertise the sprayer this afternoon, but I do-
Advertising curiosity.
Yeah,
though.
I
So,
do see
yeah.
that as probably the next step in applying protectants on our crops. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Any other questions before we head to dinner? No? We covered her? Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen, again. It takes some preparation, it takes some work to come up and do this, and I know oftentimes when I ask growers to come and talk at game meetings or conferences, I usually get more no's than yeses. I got 3 yeses in a row, so thank you for that.